24-114, a resolution authorizing the mayor to accept the COPS hiring program grant. And we welcome down presenters. Looks like we've got Bidwell and Heyman.
It's a resolution to authorizing the mayor to accept the COPS hiring program grant. This grant would be providing up $250,000 over a 3-year period to support the hiring of 2 police officers. This grant, this funding is from the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Community Oriented Policing Services, which will allow the Binghamton Police to further focus on community policing and crime prevention.
So would you like to give us an overview in addition to that?
Sure, I will kick it off and then turn it over to Captain Bidwell, if that's okay. Thank you, Councilman Porter. As the councilman said, this is a $250,000 grant from the U.S. Department of Justice. The funding will allow BPD to further its focus on community policing and crime prevention strategies to bolster public safety. As I said, Captain Bidwell is here tonight from BPD and is obviously better positioned than I am to speak firsthand about this grant and its impact on the police department. I just want to underscore the importance of the funding from a public safety perspective and the perspective of our office. That having a police department that is well-staffed means that officers are not only available to respond quickly to each call as they come in, but they are able to spend more time on proactive community policing. So it's the foot and bike patrols in neighborhoods that we've been talking a lot about lately. Those patrols that allow officers to get out of their cars and into neighborhoods, talking to residents, hearing directly from them, building that trust in the relationship that's so important with the community. In addition to, like any other workplace, when there's a workplace is well staffed, it's good for morale and has a whole bunch of other benefits that come with it. So Captain Bidwell and I are here tonight. We're happy to take any questions, and I don't know if there's anything the captain wants to add off the bat.
Now can everybody hear me? This grant's pretty straightforward when it comes to grants. This is it's pretty much a match grant. So Department of Justice will give $250,000 to go towards salary and fringe, and then our local match is about $237,000.
Okay, how many vacancies of officers do you have right now?
I think we're down about 30 right now. Does that sound right? But we have about 15 in the police
15.
academy.
Right now, 15 in the police academy, right?
Yes.
So is there, since now this funding is coming from the Department of Justice, is there a way we can use some of the budgeting for what you would have used for 2 officers, or to go allocate to somewhere else? Not this, because this is paying for officers over the period of 3 years. So
when it comes to grants, whether it's a DOJ grant, whether it's going to be the governor's technology grant, the grants are written for specific things and they don't allocate for anything other than.
Which I understand that. I understand that. I'm saying what we normally would come up with during the budget.
Yep.
For the budget season, I'm thinking, is there a way we can just go ahead, the money that you're taking in the budget that we can bring in, that we take that and reallocate that somewhere else, as opposed to actually putting money back into. Well, in other words, it's the 250,000.
So what you're saying is the feds are giving us $250,000 towards police salary. Can you take that $250,000 that's already allocated to the police department to rebudget it for somewhere else? I would say that is a question for somebody much higher than a captain.
Yeah, it would have been nice if that person was here.
So I definitely don't make those decisions.
I think I can speak a little bit to that. So my understanding and the purpose of the COPS grant from the DOJ is to support the hiring of police officers. So it's not, it is not really meant to sort of be a shuffle of funds to then send that allocation elsewhere.
I'm talking about the funding that you're receiving. I'm talking about
the funding that it will free up.
Right.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's meant to supplant.
Well,
and I think to the captain's point, those parameters are set by the Department of Justice. So we don't have the wiggle room, to move outside that.
So you definitely can't supplant. So in the email in that packet, it doesn't have the pages, but it's going to get into the requirements of the grant. And one of the requirements is you can't supplant salary. It's going to be in there. And I know that's long. I think it's 70 pages, but it's definitely in the first third.
I got a question. It says here that it's reimbursable. So when does the city get reimbursed? At the end of the calendar year, quarterly?
Yeah.
Is this a new grant or something we've applied for and received before?
We've received it previous.
That's right.
So I didn't get all the way through the actual grant. I did print it. I have it with me.
Yeah.
I was wondering if we put in for a match waiver or, given that the city's poverty rate is 31.7, one of the higher ones in the state. Is that something that we looked into? Is that,
I can tell you it's nothing we've ever done previously. If it is in there and we do fit that where we can get a waiver and not have to match it, or if they're gonna pay it completely with whatever resources they have. I mean, we could definitely look into it if it's possible.
yeah, I wasn't sure it was possible. I just
Yeah,
saw
I
that
didn't know
it was
if
an
you-
option and I'm like, well.
I don't
Our
think it
poverty
is,
rate's pretty
but I'm like,
high.
maybe I missed something that's
Yeah.
in there and, but no.
I was curious, so from the fiscal year 23 COPS instructions says, the applicant will be asked for a projection of the planned federal and local shares of the total projected cost over the 3 years of funding for each position. So, and then it went on to talk about kind of the decreasing part of the federal money and the increasing part of the local money. Is that, how does that look over the next 3 years in terms of our budget?
The way that we've always done this is it's gonna stay pretty standard. So they're gonna reimburse the $250,000 every quarter. And then Binghamton's percentage is gonna be $237,990. And so that's what
It'll
we're
be
paying.
across the
Yes,
3 years.
yeah, for the 3 years.
And then there's a mandatory 1 year after that we have to
You have to,
bear the full cost of.
Yep.
There's a list of things, again, I didn't read your proposal yet, but in terms of things that they were looking for in their application, and I thought it might be a good time for us to learn a little bit about some of these topics. So one of the things that was in here was looking at community-based officer relocation, applicants that commit to recruiting officers who are willing to relocate to areas characterized by fragmented relations between police and community residents or areas of high crime. Is that something that's in our application? Are we looking to keep our officers in Binghamton?
so I would say, I don't think that's part of Binghamton's application. I think we relied heavily on the Crime Analysis Center. And then also, CEPTED was a big portion of our application. So crime prevention through environmental design, which it gets officers in the community talking to neighbors of problem locations and how we can solve those together. So CEPTED, I think, was the biggest part of that application. This application was written, this was last year's
Yeah.
application, so I haven't looked at it in a while.
Some other topics that the COPS grant was looking for, diversity training, agencies that require evidence-based cultural sensitivity training for officers, including training on ethnic and racial bias, racial profiling, gender bias, sexual orientation, and gender identity bias, cultural diversity, use of force, procedural justice, and law enforcement interactions with people with disabilities, the mentally ill, and English language learners was like a priority area. Is that something that?
So I could say that as far as training, Binghamton has increased their training. So it used to be 1 week was in service. Now the mayor and the chief is instituted, so it's 2 weeks. So now we have a winter one, so it starts in January, runs through March. and then we do a fall one as well. And then as far as training goes, because of our close ties with DCJS and the center's connection to the state, we get offered trainings before a lot of other agencies. So we have trained the trainers in procedural justice, implicit bias. So we have on staff, who've gone to trainings to teach that.
How often do the trained trainers get retrained or?
So their
Yeah.
certifications, every training course is going to be different. It might be a 2-year refresher, it might be a 3-year. It's just going to be on the requirements of whatever that training catalog was.
Community-based hires, applicants that commit to recruiting officers from communities in which they will serve. Is there any emphasis on?
I can tell you that the recruitment drive for the city of Binghamton has been ongoing and it's been a push for years. Like we've touched on, I think we're 30 down, and I don't remember the last time the police department has been able to get close to being full staff.
So I guess going back to Councilman Porter's point about adding the 2 additional positions. And we've made it clear that the money for the open positions, I guess, can't get pulled out. So if we continue to we'd go from being down 15 to down 17 if we add 2 more positions.
Right.
If
So
I'm following this correctly, what happens to all that money if the positions are never filled?
That's a budgetary question.
So my understanding though is that the 15 recruits that are in the academy now, this funding can support their hiring because they are new police officers.
Okay. Okay.
That's my understanding from talking to finance.
I don't know if anyone else had questions.
I'll hop in real quick while you're thumbing through stuff. So is this specifically paying salaries or paying the like hourly wages of people working in the community? Like if there was somebody sitting in a patrol car, would that still fund them, or is it just like only when they're walking a beat?
It'll fund 2 positions. So the whole point of this is to get the ideal of the grant is to get the numbers to where you have the manpower where you can dedicate like a community response team, a walk-in detail, a bike detail. So the point of the grant is to increase the numbers so we have the available officers to do that. But because of the fact that we're still so low, but what we're doing is we're offsetting the cost of the city with the grant.
Thanks.
I had a question about the match amount. I think it was like 40%. I'm trying to remember.
48.7.
Yeah, so the grant has a minimum of 25% local match, but I know it can go up, but I guess it's dependent on the total cost of a new officer.
Correct.
So,
So we base it off our salary. So when we do the numbers projection, we look at what the salary is going to be, what the fringe benefits that the city pays out per officer, and that's where we factor in the numbers.
does anyone else have any questions?
Council President, if I
Yeah.
could, because
go
we
for
have, thank you, because we have Captain Bidwell here tonight. I know the council is considering legislation to accept grant funding from the DA's office for cameras.
Oh, wait,
Um,
let me ask Corporation Counsel if we can add this to agenda since it is definitely not. All right, so let's add it.
Okay, just
We're adding a discussion of the cameras grant from the DA's office.
yep, and just really cameras in general, because since Captain Bidwell is in charge of the Crime Analysis Center, I think he's probably best positioned to speak to how the Southern Tier Crime Analysis Center and the police department rely on cameras, and how that technology is really the one of the best available tools the department has for crime solving and just policing in general. So if council members had questions about that, or if there's anything that Captain Bidwell wanted to add, I just thought it would be a good opportunity, being that he's down here.
I'll tell you, you're going to see me again in, I think, the 17th for the governor's technology grant. So that's going to be funding for some additional cameras, I think LPRs. So the governor awarded, I think it was don't quote me on the numbers, $138 million throughout New York State. Broome County, City of Binghamton received substantial amount of funding for some cameras, some LPRs, to update the command vehicle. So the city PD has a command vehicle. So if there was a critical incident where we had to get this vehicle, you could sit inside of it. You can run the incident from inside of there. So we got additional funding to upgrade those. But I could just tell you, and I'll just speak just from the Crime Analysis Center and not from the PD side of things. I couldn't even begin to tell you how many crimes are solved because of cameras or LPRs. So on the back end, on the investigatory side, it solves homicides, it solves shootings. So I think just in my time, I think the three most important things that I've seen come through as in law enforcement, just on my humble opinion, it was going to be, pole cameras, LPRs, and then NIBIN are the three things that I think are very crucial to solve crime in the city and across New York State.
Anyone have any questions for Captain Bidwell? Okay,
Okay.
all right. Thank you so much for coming
Thank you.
down.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See you in a couple weeks.
All right. Next we have RL 24-109, an ordinance to modify the fire budget to cover the cost of new gear for new firefighters, turning things over to the Chair of Employees, Councilman Porter, and we welcome down Fire Chief Gardiner. Come.
It's the ordinance to modify the fire budget, basically to transfer the funds from the vacant fire positions to cover the cost of new gear for the new firefighters. Hi, Chief, how you doing?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah? But, yep, so this is, basically an ordinance. Every year we do this. We have a probationary class going on right now, new firefighters, and their gear is very expensive. And, so it's hard to establish an exact number, so we don't necessarily budget for it, because there's usually these funds are available in the personnel lines. So the comptroller's office, they pick the budget lines and they're all being transferred into the uniform line. For a total of $44,815.11.
Here, I'm looking at this budget line. We're just transferring it over. Are we is this money available in a sense?
Yes, it's available from the unfilled positions that we're currently
How many,
filling.
I'm sorry, how many positions you were saying? That was
Currently, we have seven in the academy,
okay.
and there's probably more vacancies than that right now, but
And this will cover all seven
Yes.
if they
This-
go
this is
get to the
just,
academy?
it's just their turnout gear, their helmets, coats,
Yeah, the turnout. Okay.
boots. Boots are very expensive.
I don't have any questions. Any more questions unless somebody else does.
Yeah, I was looking online and it was talking about how anything with the word fire associated with it has gone up dramatically in cost.
Certainly has.
Is that what you're seeing? Do you think that this kind of, I guess, accounting trick will work for next year's budget, or that?
It should, we might have to increase the budget a bit for next year. For example, turnout gear to outfit a firefighter. It used to be about, maybe $2,200. Now it's well over $5,000. A lot of that happened, after the pandemic. Things got very expensive and, so yeah, it's a trend. Things get more expensive. And the equipment gets damaged. And it also ages out after 10 years. You're supposed to take a 10-year-old set of gear, relegate that to the second set of gear and replace it with a new primary set. So the gear does age out.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I mean, just anytime I hear we do this every year, I really think it should probably be budgeted
Do you?
as equipment. You know, if it's really an anticipated expense every year, it just seems like it's a
Yeah.
neater way to do things.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And but it's hard to predict what the number is going to be.
Right, but at least to get in the ballpark, I mean, if it's
True.
$5,000 times how many recruits you think you're gonna have, boom.
Yeah.
You know, at least gets us there instead of, you know, pulling out of personnel that we know we're not gonna have. It
Yeah.
seems like we do this a lot, that's all.
Yeah.
It's not on you, chief, it's just a general,
Yeah, absolutely.
anyway.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next, we have RL 24-108, an ordinance to modify the IT budget to fund the IT manager position. Handing things over to Committee Chair Councilman Porter, and we welcome down we got finance people.
RL 24-108 is basically to fund the IT manager position back in March of 2024. Change the salary of 82,000 effective the same date, and the account for the payout of retiring employee. Oh, Chuck.
I'm covering for Ken. This is anniversary today and he asked me this morning if I could cover for him, so that's what I'm here for. To cover a situation where we had a employee February. We've gone through the process and made a decision, at least the mayor has made a decision on who he wants to put in that position. This old salary, I'm getting numbers, I think I wrote down the email to you, was like 88,000. The new salary is 82,000, so there's like a $6,000 savings there. We had to pay a payout of roughly $49,000. We also have to do a retro pay to the person that covered that position for the last, I think it's 6 or 8 weeks. So altogether, we have to come up with $18,726. I know there's a series of lines on there that I'm drawing that money from. All these RLs that you see, whether it was Al's, these ones coming up are RLs that I put together with the numbers, and I keep track of all the vacant positions each week. And you'll see the department it's coming from, the title of that position. If there's more than one in that position, you'll see a number in brackets. That would be like more than 1, 2, or 6 might be there. But then you'll see the time period of the vacancy. Okay, so if someone's just off for 2 weeks, I keep track of that. I have a spreadsheet that keeps track of everything. So that's what you see there, where those labors are coming from. And I know Sarah asked me a question Friday. I thought I answered it, but she came back and asked me to state that, and I didn't get a chance to send everybody an email. What a payout is if an employee leaves the city after any amount of time and they have vacation time or PL time on the books, they get paid out for that. That's a law. Okay. They have to get paid for that, and they do get paid for that. In the city, if you're an employee for 10 years or longer, you will get 2/3 of your sick time up to 150 days. Meaning that if you have 150 days of sick days, you will get a payout of 100 days. If you had 100 days of sick days, you get paid 66 days. So that's when you take the, also included in there, if someone had comp time, they would also get paid out for that comp time when they left. So those are the way the payout adds up. You see the higher payouts with people being here longer. The employees in some unions, not all unions, can carry over some vacation days, such as myself. I can carry over 10 vacation days. a year. I think it can go up to 15 on certain cases. In no situation can you carry over personal days. Okay, your sick days carry over year to year. I don't know if that explains what you were trying to ask and how the payouts arrived at.
Just trying to get to figure out how you got to the total that you were asking for.
The 18,000,
The
that was,
48. I thought it was the 48.
that was in the email where I said it was like the old salary was 88, you add in the $49,000 payout, you subtract out the savings from that position being vacant, adding back in the retro pay we have to do. So I came up with it being $18,000 short to carry us through the end of the year.
I have a question about how retro pay works. Like, just like talking me through that, like people can get a salary increase because they're covering that position before it comes to city council. Just the
In-
timeline of it,
No,
like for approval.
I'll state it this way, that there's, in the union contracts, the employees, get what they call, you know what the word is, Michael? But if someone gets out of title pay, so if someone's working out of title, whether it's police, fire, Teamsters union, they get that change in wages. Sometimes it's the next day, some days they have to wait 3 days before they get it, or a month or something of that nature. In the administrative side of it, there's really nothing like that for the most part. But we usually come down and ask for stipends. When I say whether it's a CSEA union, or the administrative type things.
So this request is not a union-based requirement to pass. It is just a proper
Yes.
request.
The IT position is a management tested position.
Anyone else have any questions? Councilman Kavanaugh.
Chuck just got me looking at what firefighter line obviously is what it is. What is TSO and MEO?
TSO is a transfer station operator. MEO would be a machine equipment operator. And what I tried to do, I was getting close to the deadline the last Wednesday to get all these in, trying to figure this thing all out. And I pretty much used up every vacant position we got out there. So. And I wanted to make sure I did it before my last day, so that I came down and did it, didn't put it on the next person in my shoes to do it. And
All right. So we'll move on to the next one, which is RL 24-112, an ordinance to modify the 2024 finance budget for payout of an employee in the finance department. And again, this is Councilman Porter's is our chair of the employee committee. And I'm assuming you two are filling in for this one as well.
yes.
Great.
Certainly don't want to be here talking about my own position, but
Let me see, this sounds like this is your position pretty much for. the
But
people.
this is, my position by charter has to be filled when I leave, okay? In order to do that, I'm asking this to be expedited so that the money will be there on Monday, so the mayor can put someone in that position, whether it's acting or he appoints somebody. And I originally sent you one on Wednesday last week, and I, over the weekend, going through this, looking at what I did, I basically took the fire department totally empty for the whole year. And I don't think that's the right thing to do. If we get a transfer that wants to come in, we then couldn't do it. So I basically backed that out of the thing, and I found another series of lines that would add up to that amount of money. And that's what I'm requesting, is the one that I sent out to you this afternoon and dropped off to do that one instead of using most of the fire money. What'll happen when we're all done with this, all the stuff today, there'll be one grade one firefighter available for the rest of the year, effective, I think it's on after 6/15. And there'll be one grade one police officer available the rest of the year after 6/22. And 3 probationary police officers after 6/22. That all the other police officers and fire money's been used up. Now, what you gotta remember is the police and fire have to go through academies. We hire the police usually in March, we hire the fire in April, and those are the only times we hire them. The only time we can get transfers in and out is if we get a lateral transfer, which does occur, but not a lot. Happens more in police than it does fire, but I think it does happen. So that was my request this afternoon to change that RL and how the money was being transferred.
So how did that work with like the past COPS grants, and I believe there's equivalent fire grants to like move this money from? Because I think this kind of goes back
Back
to
to
our
what I
original
said.
question, which was, so we can get this COPS money coming in from the grant, and then we still have all these open positions. What happens to that money? Because we heard that there's been previous COPS grants. I don't know if we currently have COPS money in that.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
There is one budget line out there for the cops.
So,
I don't
so
have
you
a
were
budget.
able to move out money from police and fire
These are.
despite those grants?
Yes, these are-
And move it into other.
One of the
things.
reasons you get the COPS grant is to try to keep the departments funded, and that you can continue to try to, it would be easy just to cut the department. And then that's what the Department of Justice doesn't really want. They want you to add people to it. And by getting the COPS grants in there, assist in the cost to the city. But it's not tied to, these are vacant positions. When there are currently, as of last Friday, there were 17. Actually not last Friday, 2 Fridays ago, not this past Friday, Friday before. There's 17 police officers vacant, and there were 3 firefighters vacant and 1 firefighter without pay.
But
I'm
that's still-
sorry,
that's-
I'm
That still brings me to the question of how that if we already have these grants that's coming in for police, that these are the grants for these things that they are specified for.
When we do the
We
grant,
have-
just so, let me explain this thing. When we do the grant, we pick out the people that are gonna be paid by that grant. So every quarter I get a list of people, what was their wages, what were their benefits, what were their workers' comp, what was their retirement cost? And we send that back to the Department of Justice for payment. There's no, that's how
you
we get
send- You
reimbursed.
send it back to,
We send them what we paid, what we paid our employees. Okay, and then they reimburse us for it.
right,
Okay, but it's not based off of. If there are some grants, and I'll use a safer grant, that you have to maintain a quantity of people greater than what you started with. This grant, you do not need to.
but then that still brings me to my whole point anyway, that means that's funding that could actually be allocated somewhere else if we get reimbursed back that money.
I didn't quite hear you.
I'm just saying that it brings me back to my point of that if the money we're getting reimbursed back for these positions that is already being covered, then we should be able to allocate some of that money elsewhere if possible. Or,
I understand what you're saying. Now, when we go to the next RL, I think you'll see how we use that money. Okay,
okay,
For clarifying the difference between a safer grant, which is the kind of fire equivalent to the COPS grant, and
Yes.
how they're different. I appreciate that. Other questions before we move on? Okay,
Well, I will just,
Councilman Kavanaugh.
just for the sake of propriety check, somebody else calculated your amounts, right? And double checked you for your,
It works automatically on the new form.
okay. Just asking.
Great. So next we have, RL 24-111, an ordinance to modify the 20. Oh, yeah, sorry. Good catch.
Oh, that's right, we gotta do that.
But yeah, I would entertain a motion to expedite RL 24-112. Based on the, okay. Motioned by Councilman Costi,
I'll second.
seconded by Councilman Dundon. Any discussion on the expedition? The recap on that was that, this position needs to be filled, was it charter mandated or New York State law mandated?
Charter.
Charter mandated, that we need to fill, our comptroller position immediately. We can't have a gap, so this would assist in having the money be there to actually hire. Okay, and with that, hand things over to the clerk for a roll.
Councilmember Porter,
Aye.
Councilmember Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Councilmember Dundon,
Aye.
Councilmember Costi,
Aye.
Councilmember Hotchkiss.
Aye.
Council President Matavetsky.
Aye.
Thank you. That's 6-0.
Right, so, RL 24-12 will be expedited, assuming it is signed out. All right. Next, we move on to RL 24-111, an ordinance to modify 2024 budget to account for vacancies in the amount of $982,833.56. And I'll hand things over to Councilman Kavanaugh, Chair of our Finance Committee.
I'll just hand things right over to Chuck to continue this lovely discussion.
So when we did last year's budget, and we've done this for many years, so I won't say that we did the volume that we did last year, but you can always expect vacancies to occur in the city of Binghamton. Sometimes they're for 1 or 2 weeks, sometimes they're for 3 or 4 weeks. And then you have the police and fire sometimes that we can't hire back for the. So when we did budget, we ended up budgeting a negative number. I can't remember. I don't remember what it was in. I think it's like A9089. Okay, but it would be a negative number in there, and it's $982,533.56. When we do the budget, we say we are not going to move any money around for wages until we get that money covered. Okay, hey, that's what I've told both mayors in the
So,
past.
sorry, what is the negative number that was budgeted last year?
$982,533.56.
This exact amount. So
Yes.
you went and found the exact
Yes,
hole that we dug for ourselves.
yes.
All right, so this brings us back to zero as far as,
Correct. But it
Sort of-
also, and it does bring us back to zero from the wage standpoint
Standpoint.
and getting rid of this 982. It removed the 13 police officers for the rest of the year that we cannot hire. They're still in the budget, but we allocated their money that we're not going to hire them with this money.
all right, so where am I looking? All right, oh, I see. All right, so 10 police probationaries, 311 to 1231. So you figure that a grade 2 police officer through the end of the year, a grade 1 police officer through the end of the year. And then some of the others that look like are only going through this month.
Yes. And it may sound a little bit crazy when you're looking at it, but what happens is in January, we may have had like 5 police officers that retired last year that can't be hired to March. Then we may have had more police officers that we plan on hiring in January and February that didn't. So those people had empty money from January to March, February to March, and then the rest of them going all the way out. We've had police officers that have already fallen out of the academies available. But each one of those positions I track individually.
So if I look at the budget in budget line A 9089 58 009, it will right now be a negative 982,533.56,
Yes,
and this fills it.
yes.
So,
That brings it to zero. Correct.
so if God forbid, we lost 5 more recruits from the police academy, those salaries that you're anticipating paying would then become a net positive or a net
It would-
available money, so to speak.
Yes, it would be money that's going back to the fund
Fund.
balance and
Okay.
at the end of the year, if nothing's done.
If it's not allocated elsewhere.
I don't know if I've done this before, but there are currently employees as of last Friday.
Councilman Hotchkiss.
Yeah, so I understand that this is what you did last year in anticipation for these vacancies, but the year prior, so I'm thinking 2022, how did we address the same issue of navigating vacancies?
I mean,
Same
we-
one.
yeah. I think in 22 or 21, we probably used 150,000 to $200,000 range in prior years. But this year, we did not believe with the 31 vacant police officers, we're going to be able to fill them up.
So the negative amount you started with is particularly large because of the particularly large number of vacancies.
That the best way to say it right there, Rob.
Okay, I'm feeling a little confused, but I think I have a question, which is, if next, so say we do the same budget magic next year, but next year magically our recruitment and retainment is just, we're just batting 100 or 1,000, whatever, I don't know, bad choice to try and use a sports analogy. Would that be a huge problem for us if we actually filled the positions
I
and
think.
retain
I think it
people?
would- I think it would be a huge problem if you had to go back and take out of your fund balance. I would say in prior administrations, we matched that, whatever that number was, to make sure we got there. Just like we have to do with payouts. We don't for payouts, otherwise you'd be paying or budgeting for stuff you don't know that's gonna happen. We hold those positions vacant until the payouts get taken care of, or we sometimes will come down here and move money depending on the position and stuff of that nature.
Is there a reason this money isn't held in like a contingency line? Like when generating a
Well, that's what
budget,
thi-
like,
This is really like a negative contingency line. It's just the line that I put it in. Instead of like a contingency that you have money for, this is like a negative contingency line.
a question, Dundon? I saw a little, no? Okay. Anybody else with questions? Councilman Hotchkiss.
Yeah, so this is roughly $1 million and it seems like it's not gonna get spent on anything, or is there a plan for it? Or,
We
There's a
went-
there's a
we-
$900,000 hole that this is filling in the budget, essentially, that we planned for.
We correct. That's, we did plan for. And if we did not plan for it, then taxes would have gone up 3%, the $900,000 to cover for it.
But that does sound like we're budgeting on a contingency.
It's budgeting for what you think is the
Real
real,
something you were saying that we were not really supposed to be doing, but we are, but what?
no, you're budgeting for what you believe is gonna happen. Okay, I mean, I could sit here and budget for 31 cops to come in, knowing that they don't happen, it's not gonna happen. And then all of a sudden, we're burdening the taxpayers with an extra $1 million they have to pay in their taxes. And then that money will go back to fund balance. Which is also not a good thing. It's not a bad thing, but it's not, I think this is the best way to keep taxes level, keep the budget flat. When I say flat, that fund balance isn't gonna go up a lot or down a lot, it should be. close
But if
to-
it, help me understand it, but if it was to go back to the fund, can you, again, put it somewhere else?
You could. That's tough. It's always possible.
Okay.
You want to make sure that you keep the fund balance at the right amount, though. I think where we're at now in the 16 to 18 million to 20 million range, it's probably a good spot. At least from, I think, the OSC standpoint. Okay, they won't tell you that, but I think that's where they'd like us to be. When it came time to COVID, I wish we had 50 million.
Any further questions on this? Okay, does anyone mind if we, and I'll ask if people are okay to move the agenda around to bring Tito up earlier, because we've got quite a bit more of the Chuck show. Would that be okay with people if we wanted to bring Tito up now? Squeeze him in? Do you mind?
We'll get my buddy out of here.
Yeah, get him out of here. You're gonna have plenty of time when you retire. Coming down, Tito.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep, you are very welcome. So this is RL 24-113, a resolution to amend the City of Binghamton Complete Streets Policy. And I'm handing things over to Councilman Hotchkiss, Chair of the Planning Committee.
Thank you. Hi, Tito.
Hi.
Do you want to just explain what we're looking at here?
Yeah, so this resolution would update our complete streets policy to include a checklist for the reconstruction or new construction of any city streets. The purpose of a complete streets policy is to make sure the city considers different modes of transportation when designing streets, including pedestrians, wheelchairs, bicycles, et cetera. So we have a current policy. It's a good start, but the addition of this checklist would sort of compel city personnel and contractors to take a look at where improvements can be made when designing streets. What prompted this is this was something that was recommended by the Broome County Health Department. And it's a required item for us to update one of our policies to be reimbursed for $30,000 of expenditures that were made for pedestrian improvements, safety improvements like speed radar signs, pedestrian signage, and other improvements that were made. So making this change to the policy checks that box that the health department set for us, and would make us eligible for that Creating Healthy Schools and Community Grant money.
So that's the primary motivator for passing this?
That is, yes, yeah.
But it doesn't, it's not necessarily a mandate for contractors or planning. It's just like, we need to, it's strongly urge.
Well, the current policy is not mandated. What this would do, and the specific text is that the design of all future street construction and reconstruction projects shall be subject to the completion of this checklist. So they will have to do this checklist, and in doing this checklist, they'll go through these items that would improve streets in the complete streets context. And they would have to explain why certain items are not included if they don't include them. It's a step closer to making sure that these things happen. It's still not, fully mandated, but it's a step closer. A lot of the work we do for reconstruction is grant funded. And a lot of times there are requirements in getting those funds to use complete streets, to implement complete streets components. So we do it anyway, but this just gives a little more of a guarantee that it'll be considered fully.
Tito, I have a question. So
Yep.
if a contractor is awarded this and they don't fill out the questionnaires, you require, what kind of enforcement do you have against the contractor for ignoring the questionnaire?
That's a good question. I guess that's something that could be considered. It could be added to the legislation if council sees fit.
Or if it was a sanction and a lowest responsible bidder law would probably cover that then through the city, correct?
That sounds correct.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions?
I mean, sort of working off of Mike's point, I guess. Are we clear of the who that would be required to fill this out? I mean,
That's
what-
not laid out here.
Is it the engineering department, the planning department, or is it at the, landscape architect level or the traffic engineering level, I
It would
guess.
probably be whoever's responsible for the design. So if it's happening in-house, it would be engineering department staff. If it's a consultant, then they would fill out the list and turn it in with their other work products.
Any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Do we want to squeeze Ron Lake in here too, so we can get out of here? You okay with that?
You want to put the quarterly financial report like towards the end? Is that what you-
Well, I'm just, because Ron Lake only has one and to let him leave before we have a few more with Chuck.
Okay.
Any objections? Okay, great. All right, so we have Director of Engineering Ron Lake with us. And we have RL 24-117, a resolution authorizing Sixth Ward Sewer Interceptor Amendment 3 to Barton Long Guidance Engineering Agreement and with a request to expedite. And I'm handing things over to Councilman Dundon, Chair of Public Works / Parks.
Yeah, so this is for the Sixth Ward Sewer Interceptor Amendment 3. All right, let's try this again. So this is for the Sixth Ward Sewer Interceptor Amendment 3 to Barton Legitis Engineering Agreement. This amendment number 3 shall be a no-cost amendment and shall serve to add the terms and conditions outlined in EFC's program requirements and bid packet for non-construction contracts attached hereto as Exhibit A with effective date October 1st, 2016 to the terms and conditions of the original agreement. All right, Ron, you want to fill us in a little bit about the original agreement?
Sure. Environmental Facilities Control requires this to be in our agreements, which it wasn't in there in the beginning. So Amendment 3 is to get their requirements in the agreement. And that's all it does. There's no cost change. There's nothing but bringing us up to date for our eligibility with reimbursements or bonds from Environmental Facilities Control.
And this needs to be expedited, correct?
It would be nice so we can get it done and sent to EFC.
I'd like to make a motion to expedite this.
Second.
Led by Councilman Dundon, seconded by Councilman Porter. Any discussion on the expedition? Nope. Clerk can call the roll.
Councilmember Porter,
Aye.
Councilmember Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Councilmember Dundon,
Aye.
Councilmember Costi,
Aye.
Councilmember Hotchkiss.
Aye.
Council President Matavetsky.
Aye.
Thank you. That's 6-0.
All right. Assuming it is signed out, it will be expedited.
I
Councilman-
appreciate- I
Point of order.
appreciate-
Councilman Kavanaugh.
I think voting on expediting just automatically puts it on the agenda. I don't think signing out, it's the equivalent of signing out, I would say. What? But we've all voted to put it on the next agenda. It's a vote to put it on the agenda. I think that's, I don't know.
Turn the question over to legal. You want to turn your mic on?
It's, we just put on a list of things to,
We can certainly look into it. I mean, I think
I mean, I think a
the
vote,
fact that you all voted to
Yeah.
expedite it means that you find it worthy of being put on Wednesday's agenda.
Yeah.
However, council have to, discern what practices you guys want to use, whether you want the clerk to deem that you automatically signing the bill out or not. And I'll defer to you guys on how you want to process that, or if you each want to go sign it out.
Might be something to put in a rules book,
Yes, yeah.
handbook. All right, any further questions for our engineer? Nope,
you.
okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, we'll call back our team of Chucks. All right. And we have RL 24-110, an ordinance to modify the capital fund to close out remaining funds on bonded projects, the serial bond account. And I'll hand things over to Councilman Kavanaugh, Chair of Finance.
Councilman Kavanaugh, before we get started, could I just make one statement that Ron forgot about the expediting? There's a grant going to be awarded on June 14th for that project, hopefully. And it's one item that may give EFC an option to walk away and not give it to us, which I don't think they're going to do. But it's the last piece that we have to button up to get that grant for sure.
Thank you. Okay. RL 24-110. Modifying the capital fund to close out a bunch of lines and reconcile the serial bond account with them, right? So, right. First, these are authorizations to borrow, correct? Not actual money that's already been borrowed, or is this actual money sitting in an account? These are authorizations, okay.
Unspent
Authorizations, right? So a bank, your is essentially canceling out your authority to borrow this money
Yes.
and reconcile it back to with the serial bond account amount. All right. Yes, I should just let you explain it. No.
I'm going to let Mr. Robinson, since he'll be the acting council.
All right.
Let him.
Thank you, Councilman, and thank you, Chuck. Yeah, we do this often, when we find serial bonds that are not going to be spent. So, the first one is the Rec Park Tennis Center, for about 456,000 pedestrian improvements. We pretty much spent all that bond line for 1,000, left. Glenwood and project from Maine to Clinton. That one is completed as well. For 180,000 left, and then the sludge extraction is obviously done too. And that we got a lot left on that one, 2.6 million for all a total of $3.2 million. Using rounding figures.
Was the sludge extractor sewage treatment plant?
No, that was
Issue-
actually a water plant.
That's actually
What it
what-
was is it's a way of when water comes in from the river, there's a lot of like sludge and grass and stuff of that nature that comes in from there. It captures it, and it used to get sent down to the plant, which was a major problem for them, even the littlest pieces.
And
So we put in a sludge extraction system that is catching it and not allowing it to freeze during the winter.
and did we get this significantly cheaper than we thought for some reason? That's a lot of
No.
extra money that was bonded for. What's the story? Okay,
What it is, we got a grant. We got a grant for it.
that pay it back. Okay. And the tennis courts, the amount that's left in the tennis court bonding, is that some of that due to money that was recouped or
Yes.
we
Yes,
just
due to the law.
the settlement and what have you? Okay.
Yes.
And I guess the others are relatively small. So that explains the two big discrepancy. Okay. I have other questions.
Questions?
Councilman Kevin, let me just say the sludge extraction, we only did half of it. Okay. The other half is another 6 million that we didn't have a grant for.
So we're getting most of the sludge out of the water. We're taking.
We're getting it out. We're getting it down to the plant on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And it's not perfect, but it's better than what it was.
You. Okay, next we have the comptroller. Again, from the city charter, I've comptroller to provide financial information, comptroller will provide all financial reports, audits, weekly revenue, budget reports, funds, cash balance, inferred advances, random audit results, to the mayor and members of city council at least quarterly basis via shared internet portal, and to come and talk to us. So this is for our May presentation.
I will try to walk through this fairly quickly and talk about the highlights and maybe the lowlights. At the end of March, we had a cash balance of $61 million. We collected 17 million of the 34 million in taxes that the county collects for us and pays us. We had 6 million in treasury bonds, and we had 23 million in treasury bonds tied up in NICLAS. NICLAS basically has a one-day turnaround on the funds that are there. Normal treasuries, you have to invest them from anywhere from a month to 4 months, so that they have a little bit longer period being tied. There's $7.5 million owed to the general fund.
Do they take a cut for that, for being so quick to turn around, or they just? It just
No,
absorbs, if they just have volume and they can deal with
it's
it.
it's a nonprofit, okay? And you try to be fair in my position and say, okay, I could dump it all there, but we also have a bunch of local banks that could use the cash to help them lend people as well as invest in treasuries for us. So it's basically 23 million with NICLAS and 6 million with local banks. The local banks are tax-paying businesses. So. But we received $7.5 million. We have $7.5 million owed to the general fund from the other funds. Of that, $5 million is owed from the sewer fund to the general fund that I talked to you about, I think, a couple months ago. Last Friday, based off of that prepayment for the final bill, we received that money and I paid back, I think it was like 2.3 million to the general fund as of last Friday.
So there's still 2 point some million
Yes.
owed back. Okay.
Yep.
And then there'll be the rest of that rebate in the fall,
Yes.
but there will still be a bit of a hole.
There'll still be probably a $2 to $3 million hole. And
Is there a plan for that?
I really don't have a plan. I think the $2 to $3 million number is probably a number that's not unrealistic, although I think the state will disagree with me. It's really a one-time cash flow, and the only way to get rid of that is either raise rates or borrow or pay a loan back and pay them back, which is gonna raise rates. So
Right, but how long is the state gonna let us carry it like this?
I think if we keep it flat, okay, I think, and they see that we took it from the 4 million that was at the end of the year to 2 million, I'm hopeful that they will be understanding. And then they're gonna want to see it being,
You mean your successor is going?
I
Okay.
laid the good groundwork with them, I think, so.
Okay,
All the funds in the city's financial system are positive with the exception of the ramps, the golf fund, and the capital fund. And the capital fund is gonna be negative all the time, no matter what. So that's never gonna be positive, because when you borrow money, it's a negative until you actually get the serial bond, so you're always gonna be behind.
all right, so give us a health report on the golf fund and the parking lot fund.
Parking ramp fund is, the revenue year to date has been pretty good, higher than what it's been in prior years. it's never really made money. It's always taken money from the city every year, but about $200,000.
I mean, it's an argument that it's an amenity, right? It's an expense toward having a useful downtown, I guess.
And it's
but-
one of the reasons that we increased the rates for this year
Okay.
to help solidify the revenue coming in, okay? The golf fund, is really
I-
gonna be a 5-year plan to break even.
The, I'm sorry. The parking ramp fund is just the ramps in the lot, the stuff that LAZ runs, right?
Correct.
The parking kiosks, that money goes where?
To the general fund,
That goes directly to general fund?
yes,
Okay.
the kiosk and the parking tickets. Go to
Sorry, go ahead.
the golf fund, is really gonna be a 5-year plan. I think last year it lost roughly somewhere between $75,000 and $90,000. We had to invest, $500,000 into equipment, for the facility up there. And that's on a 5-year lease, which is costing us basically $100,000 a year. As that number comes down, goes away. I think we won't have to be putting $100,000 worth of equipment into that every year. And once, I don't know if anyone's been up there yet, they're building a deck up there and, I think when they get that done, it's gonna help their food, and beverage sales after around the golf, hopefully.
And does it continue to make sense to, I mean, so now the golf course is sort of has relatively decent management in place and such and is functional. Does it make sense to keep it as a separate entity? I mean, Ely Park, does it make sense to keep it away from the regular, not having it be somehow underneath the park's budget or something?
I think it needs to be separated because it is like an enterprise.
An
fund.
enterprise fund? Oh.
Yeah. On the other accounts, all the revenue seems to be tracking pretty well to budget. I did update the reports and put them all in your base camp this afternoon.
Thank you.
They're a little bit different than what I sent to you on Sunday afternoon. But if you look at that, you'll see nothing in there for sales tax, nothing in there for state aid. One a $16 million item, one another $9 million item. That's due to we don't get sales tax until basically, I think we got it in the second quarter here. Okay, we get it a quarter behind. And the state aid, which is gonna be over $9 million, we are not gonna receive that till December.
Is that typical that it's that
Yes,
late? Or-
yes.
Okay.
I think they plan it that way because that's when
Like a full year behind.
I think that's when our retirement number is. That ensures they're gonna get all their money for their
Uh-huh.
retirement. On the expense side, a couple items to make you aware of, is the fire overtime line seems to be tracking higher this year than last year. I'm gonna guess he's gonna have to come down and move some money around at some point. The health insurance, and the city's self-insured claims base is definitely up so far. Not only for the first 3 months, but for the first 4 months. And the other item that I made Mr. Robinson aware of is the street lights. They are definitely running higher. I'm not 100% sure to tell you what that number is gonna be, but PSC did a rate adjustment last year. And it looks like it's gonna be substantial. I have not been able to figure the whole thing out, but I know like they call it something a decoupling charge. They charged us 4 cents last year. This year it's up to 14 cents. So I don't know what that really means, okay? If I had to make a guess, they were getting hurt by everybody going to LED.
I was gonna say, how much of all that wonderful savings we're supposed to get from LEDs has just now been sucked back?
I agree. Jumping to a couple other, the water and sewer bills, when you look at the revenue numbers, they're gonna be low because basically for the first quarter of the year, first 4 months of the year, there's very little revenue because we're always billing 4 months behind. In the water fund, the chemical line looks to be pretty high, year to date. I didn't talk to Jeff, but that seems to be a trend for the last 2 to 3 years. From a comptroller's office, we filed the annual report to the state on time. And we completed the bonding on April, I think it was 14th this year for the city. And I got a little, call it a gift, I don't know if it's a gift or not, but I keep some reports and I'm not gonna go through all these things with you, okay, but if you have questions, feel free to call me between now and Friday or call me next week, I don't care, you know, I'll answer the questions for you. This is basically a history of the city of Binghamton from a financial standpoint. The first page will just show you the tax levy going back to 1983, when it was $13 million. And at 2024, it's 34.5 million. And you can see this is broken out by different administrations. This is a form that I kept. But what's important here that I think everyone really needs to be aware of, and I hear this a lot from people, just increase taxes 2%, nobody will care, okay? I will tell you that if you go from 2015 to 2014, which is a 10-year budgeting period, had we increased taxes 2% instead of what we did, the average homeowner with $100,000 house would be paying $50 more a month in taxes, or $600 a year. So it's not just a little bit. When you do it over a long period of time, I think it does have some real effects on people. And I can speak for my mother and many other people on Social Security. $50 a month is quite a bit of money when you're living off of, you know, $1,200, $1,300 a month.
Chuck, I do have a question about that. Well, what if the city updated a tax assessment since that hasn't been done since 1993?
It's not going to change the tax levy, okay? It's going to change the tax rate. And I will caution everybody that be careful what you do. And I'm not disagreeing that the assessment needs to be done, okay? But if you do a total reassessment and you get rid of the Homestead, Non-Homestead Act, the general homeowner may be paying substantially more. I'm not positive of that, I think, but someone needs to do some work and do their homework.
Oh, yeah, definitely have to do due diligence on that.
That is a big one. I'm not saying that there's not commercial properties that are under assessed, okay? I know that the assessor looks at different things of what she can do. And maybe one of the better avenues to do is do block assessments, okay? But I think something should be done because I don't think it's fair. But I think doing a whole reassessment, getting rid of the Homestead, Non-Homestead Act may be just the opposite of what everybody wants.
Yep. Thank you.
So there's the taxes. The next one is a short page on how the constitutional tax limit has worked over the years. The next couple pages is broken out by funds, and you can see what the fund balances were each year. Going back to 2002, I think I got them. Couple pages after that is a listing of the water and sewer rates. So you can see the water and sewer rates going back to 1986 till today. When you look at that, we have the rates that we charge per 100 gallons of water and or 748 gallons of water, and then capital fees for each. It's not as simple as just going through and dividing numbers as I say, how much did they rate? Because you really have to look at the cap fees on there. And the last couple of pages are the principal and interest payments going back to 2009 by fund. So when you look at the principal and interest payments, and you go to the sewer fund, which is the G fund, basically from 2014, which it was about 2.9 million, it's now about 8.3 million. Okay, and I could assure you that 90% of that is related to the joint sewage treatment plant upgrade. And with that upgrade, I think one thing that has not really been very positive, I think the effect on the environment has been phenomenal. I think Nate goes and sees their weekly or their monthly reports, and what's going on in the river is significantly better than it ever was. And I think that from an environmental project, that was a fantastic event for the community. I don't know if anyone else had any question on the third quarter,
First quarter.
first quarter, third quarter. Yes.
All right, well, thank you so much. Yeah. Where are we at now? That brings us to RL 24-107, an ordinance to amend the 2024 budget for the demolition of fire damaged properties at 124 and 126 Henry Street. Handing things over to Councilman Hotchkiss, Chair of Planning. We welcome up our Deputy Mayor.
Hi, Megan.
Hello.
Kind of like deja vu here.
It really is.
Is anything you just want to explain this one?
Sure, yeah. So this is to again amend the 2024 budget to pay for 2 more emergency demolitions on Henry Street, 124 and 126 Henry. There was a fire that started at 124 Henry this past April, spread to 126. Because of how severely the properties were damaged, the fire department held the scene there until they could be demolished. So this legislation will essentially allow the city to pay the invoices for those emergency demolitions.
Thank you. There was something that I had thought of before when it was 122 Henry Street was, I think this was going in a insurance recovery line, but there wasn't like a real plan. We didn't think that they were insured or something to that effect. So could you explain that?
Yeah,
I'll explain it.
Thank you.
So when this fire happened, it was deemed an unsafe structure under our code and charter, meaning that it was in imminent danger of collapse and a hazard to humans. So the fire department could not clear the scene. It had to come down. So, we contacted and through various machinations, got everybody on board with the demolition. So Gora came and demoed it, and Keystone did the air monitoring. We have to pay those invoices, subrogating that cost to the owner of the property of 126. 124 is a property that the city is purchasing. We're in the process of finalizing that. However, 126 is a property that is owned by another individual. So subrogating that through their insurance to recover some costs is a separate matter. So we're working on that. But in any event, Gorick has to get paid for the work that they did.
Gotcha.
Deputy Mayor, this is just idle curiosity. I was wondering if you know how Gorick figures out how much it costs to demo a building. I wonder if, do they go, is it, I wonder if like the tipping fees, that like a tonnage times some number or something, or just curious.
I would encourage you to, maybe we can connect you with them directly.
Yeah, it's really just, I mean, it is what it is. I was just curious how they come up with a
Yeah.
very precise number like that.
Well, I can
Yeah.
tell you it varies on, like based on obviously the size of the structure, but then also I think how challenging it is based on its proximity to other buildings. But I'd be happy to connect you with the point person over, the person I have a contact for over there. I'm sure they could spell it out
Plus-
much better than I can.
The tipping fees can be different because if it's deemed as asbestos, you're going to pay to get rid of asbestos versus regular debris for construction. And seeing that this was air monitored, obviously there was a risk of asbestos. That's why we're paying Keystone.
Any other questions? All right. Next we have RL 24-115, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into agreement with WPD not to exceed $18,880. And I hand things over to Councilman Dundon, Chair of Public Works.
Yeah, this is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Whittam Planning Design Landscape Architecture PLLC, also known as WPD, for development of a master plan at Columbus Park not to exceed $18,880. Can you please explain a little bit, Megan?
Yes, thank you. So this stems from discussions the mayor has had with the Astor D. Rice Foundation, which I think many of you know is based in the Center City neighborhood where Columbus Park is located. Specifically, some conversations he had during a community cleanup event over there, where members of the Rice Foundation identified some improvements that were needed in Columbus Park. Backtracking a little bit, Whittam under the previous administration did a lot of work redesigning Columbus Park back when there was a plan to build a youth center on that park property. That effort by Whittam included a great deal of public engagement and public outreach to get input on not just the youth center builds, but also park improvements to go along with it. So I think as most of you here know, that was all unfolding during COVID. That youth center project came back significantly higher than anticipated and was essentially put on hold. The good news on that, excuse me, is that the city recently and finally reached a deal with St. Mary's to purchase the Parish Rec Center right next to the park, has secured federal funding to turn that building into the youth center, which is great news. But that being said, we don't want that development to mean that we leave Columbus Park without the improvements that it needs or that residents using the park frankly deserve over there. So we're re-engaging Whittam, or we're asking to re-engage Whittam through this RL and asking them to update and finish that master plan for Columbus Park, making changes to it as needed now that there are no plans for a new building on that property, on the park property. So hopefully that means more room for park improvements over there. And then that proposed scope of services from Whittam should be included in the work session packets, and that has some more details from them. My only other thing on this is we heard this morning that the environmental review record of the ERR is complete. So the only thing between us and having Whittam be able to start work on this ASAP is council approval. If it's something you're interested in expediting, that would obviously expedite when they're able to start work on it. If not, they'll just start after assuming council approves at the next regular business meeting.
Kavanaugh.
What you just, so the master plan for this, it's a master plan for Columbus Park being created, so which I would normally say would be subject to seeker, but is seeker been already kicked off somewhere else? I would say this.
I don't know the seeker requirement for a master plan or what happened previously under Whittam. So the ERR, I think, had to happen because of the budget line this is coming from is a community development budget line.
Okay, but I think, I mean, land use plans generally require seeker review. I think we would have to do seeker for this. It's that I'm asking, we're new. It seems like this is an action by council.
I don't know that. I'm not sure if we would need seeker or not, but.
I don't think we
this?
do for the engineering plan. I think we would have to go forward if we were going
This
to
is
break.
creating a master plan, which is a land use plan, which we should ask planning.
So they did already start work on this back under the previous administration, and if seeker is required, I would imagine that they would have done it before they began that work. But again, I'm not certain if there is a seeker requirement here.
Can somebody ask somebody?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to look into it. It's
Thank you.
not something that we have at our fingertips. So Megan, if you can ask Tito. and
Sure.
Get back to council.
Yep.
Is there any other questions on this topic?
I've got a quick one.
Councilman Hotchkiss.
I was just looking at like what the scope of this work would might be, and there's the reconstruction of the basketball courts, and right now those courts are like probably the best in the city, arguably. And the ones at Sherry Lindsay are super rough, and I know we already approved funding for those. But I guess is it how we prioritize which parks are getting funding? Is it just a conversation with the mayor and then that's what gets priority or not?
Yeah, so typically it's conversations between the mayor and the Parks Department, both of whom hear input from the residents that use the parks. With the Columbus Park basketball courts specifically, there's a drainage issue there. So while they were fairly recently milled and paved, the water doesn't drain very well from those courts. So anytime there's like a rain event, they're rendered pretty useless for a period of time.
Megan, you wouldn't happen off the top of your head who did the work on those basketball courts, would you?
I don't, but I can find out and get back to you.
Yes, if you would, please. Thank you.
Any further questions? All right. Okay,
Can I make the motion to expedite?
okay, motion by Councilman Costi. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilman Dundon. Any discussion on the expedition?
I think we're waiting on answers to questions. I would prefer
Yeah.
not to expedite it then.
I don't think it's gonna require secret.
Okay,
It's not, it's not a big deal if you guys don't want to expedite. It's just, it would allow Woodham to start the process earlier. So it's entirely up to you.
okay. So we had a motion and a second, and we had a discussion. So we'll take a roll on the expediting.
Councilmember Porter,
Nay.
Councilmember Kavanaugh,
Hey,
Councilmember Dundon,
Yay.
Councilmember Costi,
Aye.
Councilmember Hotchkiss,
Hi.
Council President Matavetsky.
Nay.
That is 3-3, a tie.
It's not going to be expedited.
That's
All right.
fine.
Next, we have RL 24-119, a resolution authorizing the acceptance of a statue from the Rod Serling Memorial Foundation. And I turn things over to Councilman Dundon, Chair of Public Works and Parks.
Councilman Kavanaugh, do you have a question?
we can rewind a second. So Deputy Mayor, so this is this is the plan for the park. Is there identified next steps yet, as far as size of investment or grants we're looking after? Is this going to be a sort of a long range plan to say, all right, we've got some money here, some money there, and this is what we plan to use, kind of in the course of normal events, or both?
Yes, I would say mostly the latter. So we've asked Woodham, we're asking Woodham to phase it out. So any improvements that they're recommending as part of their design, if they could break it into phases so that we can make decisions as the budget allows, and think about these over the next consecutive budget seasons if necessary.
Okay. I'm just curious. I'm reading that. I'm reading their project understanding. I'm just like, reconstruct the basketball courts, playground expansion, perimeter trail, multi-purpose fields, connectivity, picnic tables, benches, bikes. That seems like a list of goals, right? Like, I don't, I'm just curious what's gonna end up.
Yeah.
I know.
Excuse
Like-
me. It's because a lot of that legwork was done previously.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of this done already. They just sort of need to update the master plan based on that large structure that was going to be the youth center no longer being there. So and all that list was all generated from the public outreach and engagement that they did under the last administration.
Right, right. So I'm curious what we're getting for our money here. Honestly.
So I think we have this plan from Whittam, but the plan was accounting for the fact that a new building would be there and it would have taken up a significant footprint in the park, when the youth center was going to be built there. So without that, we would have this sort of empty space in the master plan. And now also that the rec center is and adjacent to the park, I think we'd like to just see a design where there's an entrance created from the park to the St. Mary's Rec Center. That will be the youth center. So there's some kind of odds and ends left to be done.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
But-
so,
I'll probably stop by your office or planning and take a look at the original plan.
Sure.
Thanks.
all right, so back to our statue discussion.
RL 24-119 is a resolution authorizing the acceptance of a statue of Rod Serling Memorial Foundation to be placed at Rec Park. Megan, can you give us a little insight on this, please?
Yes, thank you. So, excuse me again, I'm sorry. So this one has been in the works for some years now. The Serling Foundation has been trying to fundraise to erect a statue at Recreation Park. More recently, Assemblywoman Lepardo, I believe, secured funding. That's really now at the point where we're making this possible and they're able to purchase the statue. So COD has already approved the design and placement of the statue, which will be located at Rec Park near the intersection of Seminary and Laurel. And as part of this, the city will be paying for the concrete base installation of the concrete base for the statue. This RL is again just to accept the donation from the Serling Foundation, but just for everyone's background information.
Any further questions?
I have some personal concern. I just have to look at the COD record to the exact siting of this in the park is a slight concern. So I just like to know. We're running out of actual field to do things in Rec Park between the playground equipment and the parking lots and stuff. Where people are running out of place to play kickball and frisbee. So I'd just like to know exactly where it's going.
Yeah, so that's, I know actually that was discussed quite a bit. And the former Parks Commissioner, Pat McGinnis, was working with the Serling Foundation. There had been an interest in putting the statue originally near the bandstand, but I think, and hopefully I'm not misquoting or misremembering Pat on this, that there's not really any room at all down by the bandstand where the carousel is in between the bandstand itself and where people usually gather for events in that bandstand. So this location was identified with the Serling Foundation working with the Parks Department on where the best spot might be, and that's what COD essentially approved.
Do they plan on getting rid of the other statue that's right there, or are they just gonna keep that statue there? It's just the same?
Yeah, no, everything else I believe will remain.
So is there a schematic sitting around of the exact placement somewhere? There must be, right?
Yeah, yes.
All right.
So what other parks were considered?
Why would you go to any other park? Rod Serling's neighborhood, it's the Rod Serling bandstand. This is where the Serling statue belongs. There is no question.
Then why are you worried about where it's going?
Not in the park. I just don't want it
Yeah,
to take up
but
the
I can-
dodgeball and frisbee space.
But I also understand where he coming from, where there's the space, but you talk about kickball, that's what you use the baseball field for.
So it is,
When
it
everyone's
is,
playing baseball.
But
It
not
is near
everybody's playing
that-
baseball.
Sorry, to Councilman Porter's point, it is near that where the other statue is now, and I think that's why, like, it's
Yeah.
not in a wide open field. And as long as I have known, it's always been Rec Park, at the suggestion of the foundation because of the ties to Rod Sterling there.
That area. I think that's where basically all his ideas came from. So.
Do we know if they have all the funding for it?
I
Yeah.
believe that they do now, yes, with that grant from Assemblywoman Lepardo.
I would,
The Sterling Foundation.
it's, the last piece of art that we accepted the donation of, they didn't actually, I don't think they had the, funding for it. He's doing like a GoFundMe right now for the mural that's in the tunnel by Confluence Park.
Okay,
I just,
It's getting painted though.
it's getting painted, but there's also fundraising happening simultaneously. So I thought it was a done deal when it came here, that it was like in the clear, but I don't know. So that's what made me curious.
you know, my understanding is that they've been fundraising for some years now, and I think that with the Assemblywoman's grant, they're finally at where they need to be.
So next we have RL 24-116, a resolution authorizing the city to apply for and accept entitlement grants from HUD in the amount of 2,000. Oh, no, yeah. Just psyched myself out. I'll hand things over to Councilman Hotchkiss from Planning to talk about RL 24-16.
Right, so this is a resolution authorizing the city to apply and accept for entitlement grants from HUD in the amount of $2,872,045. So we had the presentation from Steve Carson and Justin McGregor. What's changed since then, I guess?
Sure. So, so the mayor's proposed budget and what we're looking at is included in your packet. It's not much different really at all from the proposed budget that you heard from the CDAC, presented by Justin and Steve Carson. Obviously, the CDAC spends a lot of time working on this each year and hearing from agencies. The mayor was largely supportive of their proposed budget and thought it was a good budget. So the changes are really minimal. A couple that I will point out, Binghamton Adult Education, the CDAC recommended recommended $12,000. We have this year that new 20,000 minimum grant. So just due to the administrative time and effort it takes to administer and manage those contracts, that's one where the CDAC recommended 12,000 in funding, and the mayor, it's not included in the mayor's budget. Our home allocation, the mayor's home allocation is separate from the CDAC's. That's because the numbers that the CDAC was working with were not our final entitlement numbers. Those entitlement numbers came back, and for home, CDBG and ESG were slightly lower than what we were anticipating. So that's really just the difference there. But the numbers budget reflects the final numbers that we received from HUD. Other than that, it's pretty in line with what CDAC had recommended.
Just, okay. I'm reading this right. So the recommendation is what came through CDAC, and then the FY50 budget is the mayor's budget for.
Which
I'm
are you
looking
looking at?
I'm at
Is it?
this one. Yeah, the top of the list is achieve.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess what I have in front of me is just the mayor's budget. Without this CDAC. I don't know if do you have a side-by-side CDAC and the mayor's budget?
That's what I was wondering if that's what I was looking at or not. This one? It's,
Oh, I'm sorry. Achieve action for oldest person, ACA. Okay,
so this is
Feedback
CDA.
recommendation.
Yeah.
That's what the mayor would like to allocate.
Okay, that's, yeah, so I was reading it right. And
yes, I'm
it-
sorry.
it
I'm
seems-
on the same page as you. now.
Okay, yeah. I don't really have much to ask, but I think we had a pretty thorough conversation with both Justin and Steve, and has not changed much. You gave a little bump to the Boys and Girls Club. And
CARES maybe as
adult
well.
education, yeah.
Sorry, Councilman. I think the mayor's budget, also, there's a little bump to CARES for the backpack program.
Oh, because is that another trying to hit the $20,000 or?
I believe so, yes. Yeah, because CDAC recommended 15. That's a program that we've funded every year going back. At least maybe the last 5 years, if not more. The one thing that I wanted to point out, I just wanted to make sure in your packets, is this like, do you have the Munis breakdown in your packets too? Okay, I just wanted to where it's like top left, City of Binghamton, the Munis logo on the top right. Okay. So on page 11 of that budget report, there is just a numerical error that I wanted to point out. This is let's see the best way. So it's the 2-line item, it's community development income and CEY 50 federal aid. The bottom line there is correct. This is our home entitlement. The bottom line there is correct at 551,406. There was a mistake made inputting this into Munis. So while the bottom line is correct, the community development income should actually be 95,000. And the federal aid other line should be 456,406. Yep. That's anticipated program income. 456,406 for that second line. Steve Carson pointed that out to me today. It should, yes. That should be unchanged.
Any further questions on this? Otherwise,
I'm curious
Councilman
about
Kavanaugh.
Yeah, I'm curious about what was why did the home money in particular come in lower? What was the cause of that? Do we know, or just
It's
just
just
what they
being-
felt like giving us?
Yeah, I think so. Our entitlements were slightly lower this year.
And no insight, right?
Home was the one with the biggest difference.
$95,000 or so, it looks like. No more than that, right? 517 down to 401. Okay, yeah. All right, over 100.
No, that's okay.
No, all right.
Uh,
I was just curious if there's any rationale, but there's not. It just,
Just from HUD,
what has rained down upon
from
us.
HUD, yeah.
Okay.
And then the one thing, if I could, just on the timeline, I think that Steve Carson has outlined this previously, but So, if it's okay, I'll just go over it again, the timeline for this. So the city has to submit, our annual action plan to HUD by July 15th. So kind of working backwards from that, what Steve Carson is saying has to happen is, at this coming business meeting on Wednesday, is when council would have to set a public hearing for the next business meeting, which is June 26th. There's a little bit of an extra gap there because of the Juneteenth holiday. So, public meeting for June 26th, and then the last regular business meeting that city council can approve the action plan budget is Wednesday, July 10th, so that we can submit it to HUD by the deadline of the 15th. No, it doesn't,
No.
it doesn't need to be expedited. It's just, it needs to kind of stay within that timeline. It kind of all falls into place as it is now, but just it should be set this Wednesday for then the next business meeting. Yep.
Thank you.
Well, actually, I do have a question.
Councilman Hutch.
I think there's the bigger ticket items I don't see on here. 'Cause I think the funding of demolitions was about $450,000.
So those would be on this, the munis budget sheet.
Okay.
Everything is detailed in there and it has the demo money in there. I think that sounds right. I think it was 456. It's got the capital program set asides for nonprofits. That sort of has the full breakdown of CDBG, ESG and home. Yeah, page 6 of that report has the demos. It's
Okay.
468.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
All right. Okay, so now we have RL 24-104, a resolution to authorize free parking at all municipal parking ramps for July Fest. Who would like to take over Councilman Middleton's section?
I will. I know. I'm
Councilman Dundon.
Municipal and Public Affairs.
Hey, everyone.
So this is RL 24-104. A resolution to authorize free parking at all municipal parking ramps for July Fest, July 12th through July 14th.
Yep.
Your show, Sam.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me down here. So this is a resolution to authorize free parking for July Fest. We've authorized free parking through the clerk's office for the last 40 years or so. July Fest is, I think, going into its 54th year. So this is just something that we do to encourage tourism and allow people to have access to parking during the event.
That was going to be my only question if we've done this in the past.
Yes. And the time is from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Is there an anticipated attendance number?
I am not sure, but I could find out for you and get back to you.
Thanks.
There's not statistics online about the number of people that have attended. I did do some research.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, next we have RL 24-105, a local law to amend City of Binghamton Charter, Chapter 45A, Binghamton Human Rights Commission. Councilman Dundon, would you be willing to share
Yep.
this one? Great.
Yes,
Thank you.
this is RL 24-01. It's a local law to amend City of Binghamton Charter, Chapter 45A for the Binghamton Human Rights Commission. Go ahead, Nate.
Okay, so this is my effort to bring back the Human Rights Commission. Right now, all of the appointments are mayoral appointments, and that changed in 2016, I believe, was the year. And by making this change, we would allow city council to have voting members, and we could actually populate that board like we have with the Shade Tree Commission, the Environmental Commission, et cetera. So that's what I was intending to do here.
I actually have a question for court counsel on this.
Mhm.
When they changed it in 2016, did they have to do a referendum to change that for the mayor to be able to appoint the whole commission?
I'd have to look into the history. I can certainly get back to you on that, but typically, under municipal home rule law, whenever section 2 of that law, I believe it's section 23, anything that abridges the mayor's appointment power would typically be subject to a mandatory referendum, meaning that council could vote on this as a local law. It would be subject, it wouldn't be enacted until it was passed by a referendum in November. So certainly we'll look into that and get an answer back to council.
Okay, thank you.
And Nate, my question is, with this detail to have, you be able to appoint people within community that sort of like, the advisory board, the homeless advisory board, or the housing advisory board, or even,
I don't think
Other-
that's a commission that falls under the city's purview. The Fair Housing Advisory Board. I don't know what you're asking with that.
yeah, that's what I'm asking, with that is another city's purview. Yeah.
That's unrelated, or I feel like that's kind of a third party entity. And then this is, the Human Rights Commission would be a board or a commission that is directly within the city. And it's like embedded in the city charter. So, and it already is, it's just, it hasn't been populated. Because the appointments are within the mayor, and the mayor hasn't had the motivation or desire to put people on the board.
Yeah.
But regarding, we like, right before this meeting, the clerks helped me look up the change in 2016, and it didn't appear that there was a referendum. Sophie, if you want to look at this. Okay, you already got it? Yeah, so I would like to be able to do it without a referendum, but if it requires a referendum, I don't know, it seems.
Nate, what was the pre-2016?
I have to look
Sure.
back to 2011 and 12 and see what the original law is, because in 2016, they just repealed that and replaced it with a local law. So I don't know if they were actually abridging anybody's power, or the mayor's power, council's power, whatever, which would be subject to a referendum at that time. So I think we just need to do a little bit of research, and I can certainly get back to council as fast as possible.
Thank you. Is there any other questions on that? I think lastly, the last time I remember this coming up was last year, Councilwoman Friedman had made the attempt to do essentially the same thing. And had did some good amount of research and homework, working with the state equivalent of the Human Rights Commission. And they were pretty supportive of having a local, I think a filter or something that would just kind of process requests that would then be bumped up to the state. So I remember that, and I thought that was a good reason to have a local chapter, local commission. So
Was any thought put into possibly having it as a hybrid, say 7 council appointments and 2 mayoral appointments, and having a commission of 9?
I hadn't thought about that. My feeling was that because it hasn't been populated by the mayor, that he doesn't have a desire to have this board at all, but I'm sure.
But the law
if-
will last beyond one administration. Yeah,
Say that again?
the law would last beyond one administration.
Right.
Right, so I'm, in the
So-
future, there may be a mayor who would appreciate having people.
More
on the board.
balance, yeah. So I could, yeah, I'll take that into consideration and see how we could work that into this resolution.
It might be separate from this particular We're just at how the roles are populated. But I was thinking it might be nice to incorporate some of the language that's used in the Environmental Commission in here in terms of having council delegate kind of research, legislative review tasks to the commission. Since we're looking at making changes. For example, if we had a commission, I would want to delegate them to look at the unhoused request for legislation. There might be some other requests that might make sense for them to do more of a deep dive and provide a report back to us.
Yeah, that's great feedback. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
Hang
Oh,
on, I
Councilman
got
Dunham.
another question for Corp Council. Sophie, what would be the deadline to get a referendum? Do you know off the top of your head or no?
August 5th,
Okay.
today's November 5th.
I knew you told me before. I couldn't think of it. Thank you.
That will 24-118, a resolution to compel the mayor to enact Attorney General recommendations, and I can think over to Councilman Hotchkiss, rules and procedures.
Yeah, so this is a response to, well, my response to what we're capable of doing as a city council in response to the Attorney General's report. So basically, it's just this compelling the mayor to follow through with the recommendations that are outlined there. As far as imposing disciplinary action, updating the internal affairs, training staff with their various trainings that they had recommended. So that's between the Human Rights Commission and the this resolution is just a response to what the community is asking of us in taking a position on this. And I felt myself compelled to at least put my position out there. I think, yeah, it's called the Bad Apples Act because I think everybody acknowledges that there are bad apples or bad actors that operate and they give everybody a bad name in a department or in an institution. And I think it's there's an apt response to address those so that you're dealing with bad apples. And I think the recommendations put forward by the Attorney General's report is a step in the right direction. So.
Is this gonna be, I mean, with us still being in the 90-day window for the mayor to have to answer the AG's report, is this gonna contradict that depending on how he responds to their report?
Potentially. I think what I've seen publicly thus far, he hasn't had a conversation with me. Seems generally dismissive. So I don't think that's how I feel about it.
You already
So
made a
just
statement saying that the AG was biased. With what her response is.
Just for clarifying, this would be like a non-binding resolution. Is that what you're like basically a statement, or is this do you see this as having some sort of?
I don't think this has actually any legal power. I wish no, I don't think we can compel the mayor to do whatever we want as a legislative body. So
what's the point of it?
As I stated before, it's to demonstrate our position, or at least my position on how we should be responding to the recommendations of the AG report.
So just a good feel for something.
You want to say,
I, I, I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around the point of this.
yeah, so I would think you were here last 2 weeks ago when a lot of people had a lot of emotions about the results of the Attorney General's report and the findings therein. And I think they were wanted the city council to take some type of action. And I think this is an action, even though we don't have a lot of power over the police department realistically, or the mayor's office, or hiring or firing of mostly any employee in the city. So this is a way of stating a position and trying to compel the mayor to do something. So it might be fluffy to you, but it could be important to other people.
I mean, at the same time, it's not taking action.
And
Okay.
also to add is,
Councilman Porter.
the notion is good, but if we're not to compel someone to do something when they knowingly they're not going to do it. Knowingly, they're not going to do it. It leaves us what does it leave us with? All it does is leaves us with a position. And all we have is a position, but no power to it is not making much of a statement. I mean, you can still make a statement without having to push something in to compel someone, which again, we're not going to compel them to do so, to behave, or to act right or do right. People choose not to do right, they choose not to do right. That's the unfortunate part about it. I mean, my position on it would be nice, but if I would rather have some power or something to at least have to push into it. Having a Human Rights Commission is good, but also to me is to have some people on that Human Rights Commission to act as, or even a subcommittee of some kind to act as a certain power, a more aspect of power to it, to push it within the Human Rights Commission. This is a good thought. I just think if we have no power, it's empty.
I
hear you.
just want to say I commend Councilman Hotchkiss to take a stand on something he feels personally and to try to put public pressure on the mayor to at least speak out. I commend you for that, Nate.
Thank you.
I don't mean to be discouraging. It's a good motivation aspect of looking at it and a good position to take on. Because even I take on that position as well. I just like to have power of some kind.
I'm just working with what I got here. I'm trying to.
We all have our things that we're willing to stand up and argue for. I know mine's always been sticking up for union members. So like I said, I commend you on this because sometimes you're on an island when you stand up.
Any further discussion? I guess I think some emails started going relating to whether or not this might have impact on legal stuff. I don't know if Corporation Counsel wants to weigh in on if this resolution would have any impact on cases.
Yeah, no, I think it's something that we should discuss.
Okay. All right, so with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Motion by Councilman Dundon, seconded by Councilman Porter. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Have a great evening. The sun is still out.